So, the last time we talked, a dead woman's diary changed everything. Her final words weren't just an entry, they were a warning from beyond the grave. It wasn't a sickness. Have you ever looked at someone you love and seen a complete stranger? Or worse, a monster? I laid there in the dark, the same bed where she used to sleep, and listened to the sound of my husband's breathing. The steady rhythm that once brought comfort now sounded like a countdown. Every rustle of the sheets, every soft sigh in his sleep sent a jolt of ice through my veins. The question wasn't, did he lie? The question was, what is he capable of? And am I next? Today, you're going to see what happens the morning after you realize you might be sharing a bed with a killer. This is a story about putting on the performance of a lifetime, pretending everything is normal while every instinct screams at you to run. It's about fighting ghosts inside my home and fending off a second war outside of it with my ex-husband Mark, whose manipulation just pushed my daughter even further away. And then, you'll witness the moment I stop being afraid, the moment I place that diary between us and demand the truth. And his reaction, his confession, it'll prove that Sarah's warning wasn't a memory, it was a prophecy, my future. This is the story of the moment a line gets crossed, and a fragile new family is pushed to the edge. Let's get into it. So, I have to ask you, what would you do? You have the diary. You've seen his dark side. You have a bag packed, ready to run, but you have 2 kids caught in the crossfire. Drop your escape plan in the comments below. Do you run? Do you fight? Do you call for help? I'm reading every single one. And you have to subscribe and turn on notifications, because in episode 6, my escape plan collides with a shocking new alliance. The person who helps me is the last one you'd ever expect. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. The sun came up, but the darkness in the house remained. I knew I couldn't show my fear. From now on, my life was a performance. And let me tell you, I was gunning for an Oscar. The morning after you read a potential murder confession is awkward. I went downstairs to the kitchen and began the most high-stakes acting challenge of my life, making coffee. Every move felt rehearsed and clumsy. I swear, the clink of the spoon against the ceramic mug sounded like a gunshot in the quiet house. When Michael walked in and I turned to smile at him, it felt like a smile held up with duct tape, fragile and completely fake. My brain was just running a script on a loop. Smile, ask him about his day. Don't let your hands shake. He's watching you. Does he know that I know? Every normal husband and wife moment now felt like a scene from a horror movie. You know the one, where the main character is trying to act normal because she doesn't want the killer in the house to know. She's already found the bodies in the basement. I was the final girl, just trying to figure out how to make it to the end credits. And just when I thought I was delivering a Meryl Streep-level performance, I caught the eye of the one person in the world you can never, ever fool, a quiet, observant kid. Leo was sitting at the table, just watching me. He wasn't looking at me with suspicion, but with a deep, unsettling confusion. Like he was trying to tune in to a radio station that was suddenly full of static. He knew something was off. And that was my first lesson of the day. You can't build a wall around your fear high enough to keep out the people who truly care about you. Kids, especially, they have a built-in lie detector. that adults seem to lose somewhere along the way. His questioning eyes made me feel 100 times more exposed than Michael's casual smile ever could. I was so focused on the monster I thought I was living with, so consumed with my performance, that I had completely forgotten about the other enemy, the one who didn't need to be in the house to cause chaos. And as if the universe decided I wasn't juggling enough life-threatening drama, the war my ex-husband started was about to send its first invoice. As if living in a potential crime scene wasn't enough, the war my ex-husband started was about to send its first invoice. I went out to get the mail, mostly as an excuse to breathe air that wasn't 90% unresolved fear. And I found it, a crisp, white, official-looking envelope. My address was printed perfectly, but the name above it made my stomach do a little flip. Mark Thorne, my ex-husband, getting mail delivered to my new house. It felt like a dog marking its territory, just with better credit. I tore it open right there by the mailbox, and my heart sank. It was a credit card statement, and not just any statement. It was a long, beautiful, terrifying list of charges. Sephora, Lululemon, the Apple Store. It looked like a teenager's dream shopping spree had a baby with a rock star's weekend in Vegas. And it all added up to a number that had a comma in it. A big, scary, "we need to talk," comma. And looking at that bill, I finally understood the full evil genius of his plan. This wasn't a gift. It was a weapon. He hands Chloe a magic card that grants all her wishes, making him the hero dad who gets her. Then he has the bill sent directly to me. This forces me to be the one to say no, to be the disciplinarian, the dream crusher. He was staging a little play where he got to be the cool, generous father, and I was cast as the wicked witch of the budget. This is the hard lesson about dealing with a true manipulator. They don't have to fight you directly. They just create a situation so perfectly engineered that you are forced to become the bad guy. They light the fuse, hand you the bomb, and then walk away, looking like a concerned bystander when it all blows up in your face. He was turning my daughter against me, and all it cost him was a few $1,000s he could probably write off anyway. So I walked back into the house, that piece of paper practically burning a hole in my hand. I had to go confront my daughter, knowing full well that I was walking straight into her father's perfectly laid trap. So I walked into Chloe's room, that statement burning a hole in my hand. I was about to confront my daughter, knowing full well that I was walking right into her father's perfectly designed trap. She was sitting on her bed, scrolling through her phone, surrounded by new shopping bags. The evidence was literally all around her. I tried to keep my voice calm. I really did. I held up the paper. "Chloe, what is this?" She glanced up from her phone, completely unbothered, as if I'd just asked her what time it was. "It's a credit card," she said, with a little shrug. "Dad gave it to me. He trusts me." He trusts me. The words landed like a little dart. It wasn't an accusation. It was an accusation that Michael and I didn't trust her. My ex-husband didn't just give her a credit card. He gave her a new weapon to use against us. "This isn't trust, honey," I said, trying to choose my words carefully. "This is something else. You can't just spend money like this." And that's when she turned on me, her eyes flashing with a defiance that was so much older than her 16 years. "Why not?" she challenged, her voice dripping with an arrogance I knew all too well, because I used to be married to it. "It's not your money, or Michael's, it's my dad's." And then came the gut punch. At least he wants me to be happy. And there it was. In that moment, she wasn't my daughter anymore. She was a puppet, and I could hear my ex-husband's voice coming right out of her mouth. That line, "at least he wants me to be happy," was his, not hers. It was the same line he used to use on me for years to justify any selfish thing he ever did. That's the most painful lesson about this kind of manipulation. You know you've lost when the person you love starts using the enemy's words, completely convinced they are their own. Mark had not only turned her against me, he had successfully colonized her point of view. After that fight with Chloe, something inside me just snapped. I was being attacked on two fronts, and I felt completely powerless. I couldn't fight the ghost on the other end of the phone just yet, but I absolutely could confront the man who was living in my own house. I was done being scared. I was done tiptoeing. I needed answers, and I was going to get them right now. After the fight with Chloe, something inside me just snapped. I felt like I was being attacked on two fronts, by the ghost of my ex-husband on the phone and the ghost of a dead wife in the hallway. I couldn't fight Mark's war just yet, but I could absolutely confront the man living in my own house. I was done being scared. I was done tiptoeing. I was done acting. I went to the living room, retrieved the diary from its hiding place under the couch cushion, and prepared for my own confrontation. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just waited for Michael to get home from work. When he walked into the kitchen, I was sitting at the island, and I placed the green leather diary right in the middle of the table, squarely between us. It wasn't just a book anymore. It was Exhibit A. He stopped, his smile faltering as he saw what was on the table. The color drained from his face. I kept my voice perfectly calm, almost cold. "Medical records, Michael," I asked. "You told me this box just contained painful medical records." It was like watching a statue crumble. He just stared at the diary, then at me, his eyes wide with a mix of panic and anger. "Jessica, where did you? You shouldn't have read that." He tried to make it my fault, a classic move, but I wasn't buying it, not anymore. I leaned forward, and for the first time, I felt like I had every ounce of power in that room. "I live in her house, Michael," I said, my voice low and steady. "I sleep in her bed. I'm raising her son. I think I have a right to know who she really was. And more importantly, who you really are." And that's the thing about lies. They're like a cheap dam. They hold back the water just fine, right up until the moment someone shows up with a single sharp rock and decides they're done being thirsty for the truth. I had just thrown my rock. In that deafening silence, I saw the kind, grieving husband I thought I knew disappear completely, and in his place was a cornered man forced to finally confess. Or at least, his version of a confession. The truth was out. Or, at least, the version of the truth he was willing to tell. The panic in his eyes was gone, replaced by something much more practiced: grief. It was time for him to recast himself, from a potential villain into the tragic victim. He let out a long, shuddering sigh, the kind that's designed to be seen. He ran his hands through his hair and looked up at me with those big, sad eyes, and delivered an Oscar-worthy monologue of a heartbroken husband. "Yes," he said, his voice cracking just enough. "She had an affair. It broke my heart. I built this entire life for her, for us, and she threw it all away for some artist?" He shook his head, looking down at his hands. "I said things I didn't mean, terrible things. I was hurt, Jess. Can you blame me?" And then he delivered the masterstroke. He looked right at me, his eyes pleading. "I lied because I didn't want you, or Leo, to see that ugly part of our past. I did it to protect you." And he was good. So good. In less than 2 minutes, he had completely flipped the narrative. He wasn't the man who lied and hid secrets anymore. No, he was the noble, wounded husband who had been betrayed. Sarah wasn't a victim. She was the ungrateful wife who broke his heart. He wasn't a liar. He was a protector. He was using his pain as both a shield and a sword. A shield to excuse his lies, and a sword to make me feel guilty for even asking. And that's the most insidious kind of manipulation. The kind that makes you, the person who just wanted the truth, feel like you're the one who did something wrong. But here's the thing he conveniently left out. He explained away the lies. He explained away the affair. But he never once addressed her final words. The warning. The sheer terror in her writing. He never mentioned the part about saying he'd rather see her in a coffin than in another man's arms. I was still reeling from his performance, my head spinning, trying to separate the truth from the fiction, when my phone buzzed. It was a picture message from my assistant at the flower shop, and when I saw it, my blood turned to ice. Just when I thought the battle inside my house was over, the enemy outside had just launched a new, very public attack. I was still reeling from his performance, my head spinning, trying to separate the truth from his very convincing fiction. Just as I was trying to figure out what was real, my phone buzzed. It was a picture message from my assistant at the flower shop, with a caption that just said, look what just arrived for you." The photo was of a floral arrangement so huge, it probably had its own zip code. It was one of those massive, over-the-top displays, dozens and dozens of pristine white roses, the kind of thing you send when you're either proposing or apologizing for faking your own death. And then I saw it, the little white card tucked into the roses. I zoomed in on the picture, my heart starting to pound. The handwriting was his, and the note said, "For Jessica, remembering us, M." And that's when I understood. This was Mark's masterpiece of sabotage. He didn't send it to our home, where I could have hidden it or thrown it away. Oh no, he sent it to my business, my professional space, a public place where anyone could see it, where my employees and customers could whisper about it. He knew word would get back to Michael. In fact, he was counting on it. This wasn't a gift for me. It was a perfectly aimed, beautifully wrapped bomb, intended to explode right in the middle of my already fractured marriage. The lesson? The most dangerous attacks from a manipulator aren't the secret ones. They're the ones done right out in the open, designed to make your new partner question everything, to make them wonder what remembering us really means. And right on cue, as if my ex-husband had a live camera feed into my life, the bomb went off. And right on cue, the bomb went off. I was still standing in the kitchen, his so-called confession hanging in the air like smoke, when Michael walked back into the house. He had been out for a drive to clear his head, or so he said. But the man who walked back in was not the sad, heartbroken victim from a few minutes ago. His face was a mask of cold fury. He didn't say a word. He just strode over to me and shoved his phone in my face. On the screen, a picture of the giant bouquet of white roses at my shop sent to him by a friend who had been walking by. His voice was no longer pleading or soft. It was dangerously low. "Remembering us?" he asked, the words dripping with ice. "What the hell is this, Jessica?" My first instinct was to defend, to explain. "It's Mark," I said quickly. "You know what he's like. He's just trying to cause trouble." He let out a short, sharp, ugly laugh. It wasn't a sound of amusement. It was a sound of pure rage. "Cause trouble?" he spat, his voice getting louder, losing that tight control. "Or is there something you're not telling me? Is this how it starts? First the secrets, then the flowers?"
And then he delivered the final, devastating blow. He took a step closer, his eyes boring into mine, and he asked the question that confirmed every single one of my fears. Are you just like her? And just like that, the performance was over. The kind, gentle, grieving husband I had married was gone. In his place was the man from the diary. Not the victim, the man who was so terrified of being betrayed again that he became a monster. The jealousy, the possessiveness, the terrifying paranoia she wrote about was staring me right in the face. He wasn't seeing me anymore. He was seeing a ghost, a pattern, and he was putting me in the same box he had put her in. It's a terrifying lesson to learn that sometimes a person's love isn't a safe harbor. It's a cage. And when they look at you, they don't see you. They only see the person who hurt them before. The mask was completely off. I wasn't looking at a grieving husband anymore. I was looking at a man on the absolute edge. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, the diary wasn't a story about the past. It was a blueprint for my future.
The mask was off. The man who had just stood in my kitchen, his face twisted with that possessive rage, was not a grieving husband. He was a man on the edge. And I knew with a terrifying certainty that the diary wasn't a story about the past. It was a prophecy about my future. The sound of the front door slamming wasn't an end to the fight. It was a starting pistol, my starting pistol. I didn't think. I just ran. I flew up the stairs to our bedroom, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would break through. I yanked my duffel bag out of the closet, the one I used for weekend trips that now felt like a lifetime ago. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grab my things. I wasn't packing. I was just grabbing and throwing. A few shirts, jeans, my wallet, my keys, and the diary. I grabbed the green leather book from its hiding spot and shoved it deep into the bag, a piece of evidence in a case I was now terrified to solve. I knelt on the floor, the full bag in front of me, and my hand trembled as I pulled the zipper closed. In the silence of the room, the sound was deafening. Every second that passed felt like an hour. My eyes were locked on the bedroom door, half expecting it to fly open at any moment. And all I could think, over and over again, was, get out now. The line had been crossed. This house wasn't a home. It was a cage, a beautiful architect-designed cage, but a cage nonetheless. And I had to get out before he came back and locked the door for good. He didn't just yell, he revealed himself. The whole day was a tightrope walk over a canyon of fear, from my Oscar-worthy performance at breakfast, to fighting a war by credit card with my ex, to the moment he sat at our kitchen table and spun a beautiful, tragic story of a heartbroken husband. I almost believed him. But then the flowers came, and that carefully constructed mask of the sad, gentle victim didn't just slip, it shattered. The same jealousy, the same suffocating possessiveness that Sarah wrote about in that diary, I had just seen it with my own eyes, heard it in his voice when he spat her name at me like a curse. And in that moment, the fog of love and hope and making it work just vanished. All that was left was a terrifying, crystal-clear truth. I was no longer investigating a memory. I was escaping a reality. But as I stood there, bag packed, a new, sickening thought hit me. Where do I go? And what about the kids? I can't just take Chloe and leave Leo behind with him. My escape wasn't just about saving myself. I had just triggered a war for my children.
So I'm turning it over to you. I want you to be in that room with me. You're Jessica. You have a packed bag and maybe 10 minutes before he comes back. What's your escape plan? A. Take Chloe and run. B. Try to get both kids out. C. Call the police. Tell us what you would do in the comments below. And you have to subscribe and hit that notification bell because in episode 6, The Alliance, my escape plan hits a brick wall. And an unlikely ally emerges from the very last place I ever expected. Trust me, you won't believe who helps me.